Please join me in welcoming our governor, who's leading the way forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please be seated. Continue to eat. I grew up in an Italian household. I'm very comfortable with people eating and talking at the same time, actually. First, to Bill Rudin and Abney, who has done a phenomenal job as a convener, as a place of discussion, as a leader for this city and state at very difficult times. Let's give him a round of applause, Bill Rudin. I am so excited about what we're announcing today, and I'm so excited that the Vice President is here with us to do it. The Vice President has been a friend of mine for a long time. When I was HUD Secretary, we did a lot of work together all over this country. We did work in his home district. The Vice President has always been a disciple of capital construction, investment in that beautiful word, infrastructure, and always been an advocate for investing in the facilities of tomorrow and putting that together with workforce development. And those are the two keys to making this economy work. And he's been talking about it for many, many years. And I've sat in many audiences and I've listened to the Vice President and I said, he's right. He's right. Why doesn't anyone do that? And now I'm governor. And you know what? I'm the person who's supposed to do that. So you know what? We're going to do that because the Vice President was right. The Vice President and his team, who are many of his team are friends of mine, they have been the go-to facilitator, let's say, for anything we needed federal. A project like an airport project requires a lot of federal approvals, as you can imagine. Not to say that the federal government isn't always a pleasure to deal with, because it is, really. You know, I love it, Joe. When I have nothing to do, sometimes I deal with the federal government just because I enjoy it. But whenever we needed anything done, the approvals for this project, expediting the approvals for this project, it was done mostly by the help of the Vice President's office, and I'd like to give him and his team a round of applause and thank them for their help. We are going to talk about airports today primarily, but in general, the larger conversation that the Vice President has always been advocating, which is building a society that is economically potent for the next generation. And New York makes this case probably better than any place in the United States, because New York's greatness was driven by its ability to dream big and to build bigger. Our growth was always a function of ambition meeting intelligence with that New York attitude that just wouldn't take no for an answer. That New York positivism and belief in itself, that there's no challenge that we can't rise to. We did the impossible, and then we did it again and again with tallest buildings, longest bridges. There's nothing that we couldn't do. We were New York. That spirit was then institutionalized in the creation of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey in 1921. That was the first national movement towards a regional governmental organization that put together the transportation system's connections to the economy. At that time, state and city governments were also aggressive and optimistic. And the product of all of this was that they built and they built and they built. And when you look at the array of things just the Port Authority was building, it is breathtaking. 1928, Outer Bridge. 1930, they come back with the Holland Tunnel, Bayonne Bridge, George Washington Bridge. 1931. That was the attitude, and we executed and we performed. Somewhere along the way, we lost our momentum. And the we is New York, but the we is also countrywide in many cases. We lost our momentum, and you saw other places capitalize with that kind of innovation that New York was all about. China is doing maglev trains. South Korea, state-of-the-art airports. Airports so beautiful you would almost travel just to see the airport itself. Dubai, an amazing airport complex, really redefining what that experience and what a state-of-the-art entranceway is all about. And when you look at that growth and compare it with where we are today, we have outdated airports, rails, bridges that desperately need repair. And somewhere along the way, we lost the connection between transportation and economic growth. I was with the Vice President this morning in Rochester, and he was talking about where the roads lead, where the fiber optic lies. That's where the economy grows. We've learned that lesson. We have to relearn it now. And for New York, it is time to move, because all the planning and all the talking is nice. But if you're not acting, if you are not accomplishing, and you are not performing, you are doing nothing. You are standing still. And the obligation and the job of government is, you know what? To get something done. Not to talk about getting something done, not to advocate what should be done, but to actually do it. We upset the choir with that one. So it's time to move, and we are reimagining our ports, our rail, our roads, our technology, and our airports. We're going to talk about airports today, but a minute on rail, because we have Chairman Tom Prendergast here. The connective tissue for the metropolitan area is all the MTA, right? Suburbs, New York City, that's all the MTA. The MTA, in my opinion, was underfunded for a long period of time. And the MTA has come up with an intelligent capital plan that we've been discussing over the past few weeks. Originally, the capital plan was about $30 billion. We asked the MTA to look at design build. As you heard from Bill Rudin, we used that on the Tappan Zee Bridge, and we saved billions of dollars, literally, on the Tappan Zee Bridge. The MTA is applying design build to their budget. The budget went from about $29 billion to about $26 billion. We asked the MTA to make sure there are no additional fare increases besides the scheduled fare increases. That left a gap of about $11 billion. Last week, Chairman Prendergast sent me a very lovely note saying of the $11 billion, he thinks the state should contribute $8.3 billion, and that should be the state's fair share. I've said privately, today I say publicly, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. The state will fund the $8.3 billion. We'll put it in the budget next year. We believe in the MTA capital plan. As far as roads, we have the most robust road reconstruction program going on now, and it's been more robust than any plan in the past 30 years. Technology, this state has the commitment to be the first fully wired state with high-speed broadband from every corner of this state, and we want to be the first state in the nation to get that done. And today we're going to talk about our airports and the connectivity. There are basically 4 airports in the regional area. Let's start with Stewart Airport, which is north of New York City, Newburgh, New York, about 60 miles from New York City. Stewart is 2,400 acres and has the second longest runway in New York State. They have much more capacity than they are now using. They have capacity to take commercial flights that are overbooking in JFK and LaGuardia and bring them to Newark. They also have the capacity to take a lot of the cargo that is now going to JFK and have that cargo delivered to Stewart. If you are shipping goods that are not ending in New York City, it makes very little sense to fly them into JFK, send a truck into JFK to pick them up, and then move them from there. Stewart Airport would be a natural for that kind of truck traffic. It's right at the intersections of 84 and 87, so the transportation access is much better. To facilitate the growth of Stewart, we are coordinating in terms of flights with JFK and LaGuardia, but we're going to make Stewart what we call a New York free trade zone. We're going to take Stewart Airport and make it a startup New York zone, which is a tax-free zone for 10 years, which makes that the least expensive place in the United States to cite a new business. Not a state that has no income tax, because if they have no income tax, they have some other tax, value-added tax, property tax. These are 100% tax-free zones. People think about New York, they say high taxes. No. Startup zones, the lowest taxes for business in the United States. We're going to put the startup zone together with the airport as a free trade zone, and then to get flights and cargo to move to Stewart Airport. Secondly, JFK, we're on our way towards restoring the majesty of the JFK Airport. We're going to design a master plan for JFK that has a unified version for the current disparate terminals that are developed over the years. The master plan will be done within 12 months. In addition to a master plan project, we're announcing an historic renovation where JFK's award-winning Saarinen building is going to be constructed into a new state-of-the-art hotel, 500 guests, 40,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet of observation deck. The hotel will create more than 3,700 jobs. Agreements are already in place with the Hotel Trades Council and the Building Trades Council. Let's give them a round of applause. Construction is set to begin next year, and the hotel will open in 2018. Republic Airport is on Long Island. It's currently an underused facility, and today we are announcing a request for information for Republic Airport for private sector management and development. It has been sitting, it is underutilized. We're going to make it also a New York free trade zone with a startup tax credit. We're looking for private sector partners to come in, run the airport, take the space that adjoins the airport, and develop it as a free trade zone. We're doing all of this simultaneously, but most of all, we're focusing on LaGuardia. LaGuardia Airport is located in the great borough of the Queens. I'd also like to mention that Congressman Joe Crowley has been a fierce advocate for LaGuardia for many years. He's my Queens homeboy. Let's give him a round of applause, Congressman Joe Crowley. LaGuardia started in 1937. Mayor LaGuardia took a flight. He refused to get off the plane because the plane ticket said New York, but the flight landed in Newark, sort of like our sports teams now, as a matter of fact. And he refused to get off the plane, saying he was supposed to land in New York. As he had reporters on the plane, he had them land at Floyd Bennett Field to make the point that New York should have its own airport. You shouldn't have to fly into Newark. Within a decade of opening, in 1939, LaGuardia became the busiest airport in the world. Ironically, 50 years later, the Newark airport is still bigger and busier than LaGuardia Airport. LaGuardia is un-New York. This is a new phrase. You've heard the phrase un-American? Well, I'm starting a phrase, it is un-New York. LaGuardia is slow, it's dated, it is a terrible front door entranceway to New York. It is a lost opportunity. It is almost universally decried as a poor representation of an airport, let alone a New York airport. You talk to people who went through LaGuardia, you hear all sorts of things. I actually heard someone say that if he were blindfolded and he landed in LaGuardia, he would have thought he was in a third world nation. Now, I don't remember who said it, but it was a strong, some would say prophetic vision, which I believe in many ways was an impetus to say to New York, get up, move, this is unacceptable, and it's unacceptable for New York. It came from a man who speaks the truth and speaks his mind, and that is a beautiful thing in life. It's a truly special thing in politics. Let's give the Vice President another round of applause. Last year, I reached an agreement with Governor Christie to allow each state discretion in managing their airports. The airports are run by the Port Authority, but we have an agreement where each mayor will have discretion on running the airports in his city. In the past, the strategy by the Port Authority had been a piecemeal rehabilitation strategy, but the goal is not really to repair and rebuild a 1939 airport, right? We want an airport that is a state-of-the-art facility. We want a globally renowned airport for the next century that is worthy of the name New York and what we're doing. We appointed an advisory panel led by Dan Tishman to work with the Port Authority to reimagine LaGuardia. There is a very attractive picture of Dan Tishman, actually, before he served on the advisory committee. He looks somewhat more weathered now, as you will see shortly. The goals for the advisory panel were threefold. Number one, replace the old complex with a modern, unified, world-class airport. Now, this was easier said than done, because LaGuardia had become a series of ad hoc terminals. You had Terminal A, which is the Marine Air Terminal, which is off on one side. You then had Terminal B. You then had Terminal C and Terminal D. There was no airport per se. There were a series of disconnected terminals that were running. To make it even more complicated, two of the terminals, C and D, were Delta terminals, which means they were owned separately and controlled by Delta. So you now had this division of ownership and this division of authority. Our vision was for a unified terminal, like the state-of-the-art terminals around the globe, and we had to overcome those four disparate terminals to do that. Second goal was to improve flights by opening more open space for flight operations. Now, as Bill mentioned, LaGuardia is a relatively small airport, so you didn't have a lot of options of acquiring additional space, so you needed to reconfigure the additional space. Third, we wanted to connect LaGuardia with mass transportation, including ferry and rail service, so it wouldn't always be a car ride to the airport. That would be the venue of the past. We wanted the venue of the future. We had three pressing obstacles to deal with. First, the Port Authority was already underway in planning a replacement of Terminal B only. Second, the Delta terminals are disconnected and they're privately leased. So really, the Port Authority has no power over Delta and can only develop what they can develop, but without Delta, you can never get to a unified terminal. Third, LaGuardia is landlocked, so finding more flight operation space was a challenge. The advisory board and the Port Authority, in a relatively short time, literally just a matter of months, actually, came up with a very ambitious plan. They presented a master plan for a new airport that doesn't rehabilitate but replaces the airport in its entirety. Basically, what they said was, there is no way to fix this. We need to literally tear it down and rebuild it. It comes up with more flight operating space, which is key for LaGuardia because that's what's been causing a lot of the delays and a lot of the limitation. It has a world-class retail and hotel complex, state-of-the-art new post-9/11 security protocols, the first airport being built since 9/11. So it will incorporate in the design the new security protocols. It will also have train and ferry access. The new airport eliminates the isolated terminals, builds one unified terminal. It moves the entire footprint 600 feet closer to the Grand Central Parkway. That creates 240% more space for flight operations, which will be transformative for the LaGuardia Airport. It also will have a rail link in the future connecting at Willets Point, where the MTA offers train service, and will make a connection from Willets Point to the airport to an air train system. It will also have high-speed ferry access from what is currently the Marine Air Terminal. Best of all, it's not a plan, it's not a sketch, it's not a dream, it's not a vision, it is actually happening. The Port Authority passed a resolution initiating a public-private sector partnership to build the first portion of the new airport. The cost to the Port Authority is $4 billion. More than 50% of that cost is going to be privately funded. It will break ground next year, believe it or not, thanks to getting all the approvals done in time, with new facilities approximately 39 months, with all construction completed approximately 18 months thereafter. And Delta has agreed to be a full partner in the new airport, and that is the only way that we've gotten to this new design. Just in construction, 8,000 construction-related new jobs. Congratulations to the Port Authority and Governor Christie. Governor Christie has been a very good colleague working with this state on the priorities for this state. Chairman John Degnan, who walked in, had a lot of things going on at the Port Authority, but took the time to make this a priority. Let's give him a round of applause and thank him for his help. I want to thank the entire board, especially Scott Reckler, who is the vice chairman, who's done a great job for us. Pat Foy, the executive director, who's going to implement this and has been implementing it and has really performed a great job. And I want to thank my special counsel to the governor, and I'm very big on delegation, so I sort of just took this task and said, here, Rick, you do this. And lo and behold, he did. Rick Cotton, thank you very much. Delta Airlines, this does not happen without Delta. If Delta does not agree to cooperate with this new terminal and does not agree to be part of this new development, this doesn't happen. Our option would have been to build a new terminal but stop at Terminal C and D, which would have accomplished very little, frankly. It was also hard for Delta because Delta had the newer terminals on the site, so it was actually more difficult for Delta to make this determination to go forward, especially under the short time frame. Delta has been a great citizen to this state, a great corporate citizen, and Delta has stepped up to the plate in a big way. They will cooperate, will build simultaneously, will be in parallel. They didn't have to do that. Because of that, New York is going to get a new airport. Ed Bastian, thank you very much for your cooperation and your help. And I want to thank you to our federal partners. I would go through the list of all the federal approvals that we needed to do this, but it would be like reading the alphabet backwards 57 times. We had approvals that normally take years, expedited by the Vice President's office, and that's the only way we've made this much progress this quickly and that we're meeting this time frame, so we want to thank them. I want to thank all of them together. because working together, New York will once again lead the way in infrastructure development. Last year, our project, the new Tappan Zee Bridge, was the cover of the President's annual budget. It has become a national model. The speed and intelligence with which we are replacing the Tappan Zee Bridge with design-build legislation, so it was highlighted as a national model. And now New York will have the newest major airport in the United States. Just think of that. And we're going to go from this, the old LaGuardia, and all the complaints, and all the years that we endured it, to this. Welcome to New York's new LaGuardia Airport. This is what New York deserves, and it has deserved for a long time, and now we're going to get it. And this is just a metaphor for what we can do when we work together and we have the ambition and optimism and energy that made New York, New York in the first place. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Governor Cuomo, for your gracious introduction to the new LaGuardia. And I want to thank you and compliment you for your wonderful staff of airbrush professionals for making me look so good in that slide. Thank you, Bill and Abney, for hosting this very special event. It was more than 6 months ago when the governor asked me to serve as the chair of the Airport Advisory Panel to advise him and the Port Authority on modernizing LaGuardia and JFK. I was fortunate to be joined on the panel by 6 individuals with a broad breadth of experience in their respective fields. Amanda Burden, the former Commissioner of City Planning, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. Tony Collins, the president of Clarkson University of Potsdam, New York. Jose Gomez Ibanez, professor of urban planning and public policy at Harvard University. The Queensborough president, the Honorable Melinda Katz. Jackie Schneider, the Special Advisor for Infrastructure for the State of New York and the former head of the city's Design Commission, and John Zaccotti, the co-chairman of Brookfield Office Properties and chairman of the board of Brookfield Financials. I want to thank you all for the hours and hours you put into this remarkable effort. The panel took a deep dive into LaGuardia's condition. We reviewed the submissions to the governor's master plan design competition, choosing 3 finalists and pulling the most innovative ideas from them all. We concluded the airport is in the condition that we see today largely due to sporadic, piecemeal development over the past 50 years, and desperately required the bold approach that the governor has asked us to develop. In the end, we put together a vision and a plan for LaGuardia that brings the airport to the 21st century while serving as a good neighbor to the people of Queens. But more importantly, over the last 2 months, this plan has developed tremendous momentum. The great challenge I faced in building large public projects over my career is to get the government to move. Such was the case with the World Trade Center. But this project is the exact opposite. With this project, government is now moving faster than it has ever moved, and with the support of Governor Cuomo, I'm confident that a 21st century LaGuardia Airport is on its way. Now I'd like to play a brief video that will describe our plan to deliver a 21st century airport to the state of New York and the region.
Dirty,
cramped,
hot, delayed.
The seating area is pretty small.
it makes you think twice about flying in and out of LaGuardia.
This is my first trip to LaGuardia and probably my last.
It's no surprise, LaGuardia has its issues.
A famous person once said, and I quote, if I blindfolded you and took you to LaGuardia Airport in New York, you would think I must be in some third world country. Now, who do you think said that?
The airport was built decades ago, and back then it was state-of-the-art. Now, not so much. Imagine squeezing 13 million people into one terminal that's meant to handle 8 million people.
I took my first airplane flight in 1955 on Mohawk Airlines right out of LaGuardia. The world has changed since 1955, but LaGuardia hasn't.
If the city wants to continue to be a great city, it's got to have great airports.
And it's not just about getting from here to there. It's about jobs and about the economy.
Every year, LaGuardia contributes more than $16 billion in economic activity to the region, generating about 121,000 total jobs and $5.9 billion in annual wages.
So that's why Governor Cuomo came to us with a mission: create a
I'd love to get your take on